Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Mark Rosa, the CIO of Mohegan Gaming and Entertainment. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks for coming on. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLink's intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 security operations center, we use a combination of AI and cybersecurity technicians to see when a hacker's successfully bypassed your security. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Mark, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Mohegan Gaming and Entertainment and your role there as CIO?
Happy to do that. Thank you. So Mohegan is a tribal nation located here in southeastern Connecticut, and has a very, very successful organization and supports about 2,500 tribal members. So the organization is sort of a governmental operation, a sovereign nation, but also an operator of many different casino, resort, and entertainment facilities. So their flagship property, of course, sits in Uncasville, Connecticut, and right on the reservation. Absolutely beautiful. It's been around since 1996. And from there, they've gone and branched out into having management agreements with other tribes and with other commercial operators. They went and purchased a casino in Pennsylvania for a more regional property there. They've partnered in Canada. We have two casino operations up there at Niagara Falls. And then they went and built a $2 billion facility in Inspire in Korea at the Incheon Airport. So we are truly a global enterprise with many different properties that we're either managing and or are owning and running. And when I think about Mohegan and their locations, all of these properties have multiple hotel towers, food and beverage outlets, arena with entertainment, and as well as gaming, right? So, and the gaming part of it is what most people resonate when they think of Mohegan. They think of coming to a casino operation, but there's so much more to it, right? The non-gaming revenue is really becoming quite substantial. And so we're very focused on that. We're very guest service oriented culture as well. The Spirit of Aquai is our internal corporate culture. It's really, really powerful. Probably the most respected and recognizable culture I've ever worked for in my career, honestly. So this particular organization has been special for me. I've been here 8+ years. I started off working for the tribe directly as their head of internal audits. And so I spent 2 or so years doing that. And then the opportunity came up for me to fill in as the interim CIO while they were making a change. And so I did that for maybe 6 or so months. And before you know it, they were asking me, would you just interview for the role and take it forward, because things were going quite well. So I was happy to do that, take that opportunity on. And it's been, my gosh, almost 6 years that I've been in an IT position here, leading a tremendous team of professionals, probably 200 or so across the globe of IT folks. So it's a large organization, super smart team. I did mention to you, I started in audit. Well, I'm an accountant by trade. In here, sitting in IT, I'm not a techie as much as my team is, and certainly appreciate all that they contribute to the organization. But fantastic role, fantastic organization. Very happy to be here and happy to share some of my experiences with all of you today.
That's awesome. Well, I have so many things I want to talk to you about. Now, when you were talking about culture, did you say Aquai? Was that the?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that? I'm not familiar with it. Can you?
Yeah. So the tribe has, when you think about Mohegan back in the day when settlers were coming in, one of the things that Chief Uncas did is he was very welcoming and collaborative and cooperative with the settlers, and that got them, the opportunity to share a land. They helped them build and grow crops and do things. So that culture was where he came from, and it's something that they've instilled for generations to come. And it's really powerful, and it's something that sits in our organization today. And if you don't live and breathe it, you just don't last here. It's just it's not the place for you, right? So very, very important tenets, we call them, of the culture. and something like I've never seen before, honestly.
Huh. So it's this I guess a foundational culture of what community and uh, how would you describe it? Like
Yeah, welcoming, building relationships, collaboration, communication, right? It's just making sure, and it's how you treat your employees, of course, how you treat your team members, but also how you treat your vendors and your customers, right? So we're, like I said, very guest focused. Guest service scores are really important to us. Our team member service, those are the folks who get it done. Without them, we're nothing. So, we really have this culture instilled in our people so that it becomes something that's in our DNA and woven within the fabric of how we operate the resorts across the enterprise. I will say we brought that same culture over to Korea and instilled it in those folks as well when we hired a large team there. So it's just a tremendous thing here.
I think this is really fascinating because we start as we talk to a bunch of different CIOs in different industries. When you talk to them about the different corporate culture, and you can tell some people are very, from what you might consider or one might consider a very traditional corporate culture, and it is entirely different than some where they really believe in that sort of collaboration and supporting each other and being welcoming. And so that I think that Aquai that's the right word, right?
Yes.
I think that spirit and that idea is so I think it's fundamentally important to every organization. And it's funny how some seem to like come upon it in a very Western way. And they're like, oh, this is the right way, and and others don't at all. And you can see the difference in the way that people interact. So they, how happy they are at their job, how fulfilling it is. Because it's interesting because you see, some people kind of get lost on the trail of profit, and they're only focused on that, and it's profit at all costs, and that just doesn't work. Anything at all cost doesn't work.
Right. Totally
So
agree. And when you think about Mohegan too, I'm a rookie at about 8 years, right? I would say our average tenure is in the 18 to 20 years, and that just says a lot about the culture and the people that work here. And we've been around almost 29 years, and we have over 350, I think, day one team members from 29 years ago. So and I have a couple on my team, and just so much respect for those folks because you don't see that very often today.
that's fantastic. Well, kudos for you guys. That's fantastic. And it's nice to have that, kind of foundational. It's in it came from the very beginning. So, well, let's shift a little bit to, I think the burning question on everybody's mind has got to be, I mean, in the day of cyber threats, and now you're in the casino industry. I think it's been it's very obvious to everybody after MGM and what's happened to Vegas. They're clearly under attack. So I'd say your industry, perhaps more than most, I would say is under heavy attack. Right. I mean, I think that's just obvious. So how do you deal with that? It's kind of it's not even a live fire exercise for you guys, right? It's a daily challenge, right? So you're at war. How do you guys deal with that?
You cross your fingers and hope nothing bad happens. No, honestly, it's been my number one focus since coming into IT. I will say this: I made a change right away in the cybersecurity leader, and I put in a seasoned veteran, and he's still with us today, and he does a great job leading the team and really driving home the strategy. At the end of it all, it is a battle. I tell the team it's a battle plan, right? And there's a war over here, and there's a skirmish over there, and you can't just be one singly focused on this, that, or the other thing. It has to be all things at once in order to successfully navigate this challenge. It is an enormous challenge. It keeps me up at night. I will be totally transparent about that. This is the thing that takes businesses out, and our industry has suffered several significant attacks, and even tribal nations have been under attack as well. So I am certain that if this was not my number one priority and focused on it, and we'd probably be having a different conversation today. But again, I will say this: the tribal council that I work for, those folks have been extremely supportive of the strategy and the plan, making the investments in the right best of breed tools so that we put our best foot forward. I've got a great team. I've been able to hire great people. And so that team has grown. We're continuously adding great resources to it. And we're constantly evaluating our vendors and the support staff behind it, because you need a full-on battle plan, and you need everybody rowing in the same direction in order to just stay, equal to or close to where these nation states are. So it is a problem. It's concerning to me. My leadership has been extremely supportive of the tactics that we've put in place and the plans that we've done, and really trying to drive our best foot on this one. The best of breed tools is a big part of it, right? You got to have the proactive measures in place, whether that's vulnerability scanning, it's you're doing your regular pen testing, training and awareness of your team members couldn't be any more important, right? You've got to make sure everybody, front line, back line, front of house, back of house, how we frame it in the casino industry, everybody's got to be looking, and vigilant of cyber attacks, especially through emails and social engineering. We put in some great tools, and we've tried to lock down our devices, zero trust everything that we can, and from a conditional access rules and firewalls and MFA, you name it, we put it all in place. We didn't have a lot of that when I came on board. So this is fairly new. I will say 6 years ago, it was a thing, but it wasn't as important, or at least as, the investments weren't necessarily there 6 years ago. They're there now. We're doing everything we can in our power to make sure we improve. We actually even had gone through an MSSP RFP and swapped that vendor out. So we had a better vendor with better vision, better hearing, somebody who's out there looking out for your best interests on a day-to-day. And that made a tremendous difference as well. So I'm excited to be working with our vendors who are really, working with us on all of this. My team is truly focused in on it. It is 24/7. When I talk about our industry, we don't close. We closed for COVID. And it was for 75 days. Our flagship property didn't even have locks on the doors. We'd never closed the doors ever since 1996. And we had to for that reason. We hope to never close again. And for those reasons, we certainly make sure that we put in the best foot forward on all of our cybersecurity measures. We are going down a framework, the CIS framework, that is what we're trying to align best to. And that sort of aligns with NIST. So we're all in the framework world of trying to make sure we have the right controls, the right tools, the right training, and the right partners, quite frankly, to help us navigate this challenge. But it is a big one, and I'd never rest easily on it, for sure.
That's great. Well, I mean, 6 years ago, you came in, just in the nick of time, really. I mean, that was when, as the world started to change, you got what, about a year or so of getting into the position before everything started changing and changing rapidly. And I think, honestly, I'm one of those people who thinks that even, recessions, depressions, anything bad, there's an upside to it. There's, good will come of it if you power through and you learn the lessons through it, right? You get leaner, you get meaner, you get better, through those tough times if you go about it the right way. You sit down and cry and you don't do anything about it. Now you've just suffered needlessly, and that's just not, I don't think what it's about. But I think because of COVID, because of the ransomware and the massive surge in cybercrime that kind of came from that time, I think we become better as an industry, as a nation, if you will, in prioritizing cybersecurity, what needs to be there. I mean, before then, as you said, you came in and not a lot of stuff was in place, and you could get away with that, and that was fine because we weren't under constant attack, under constant, at least constant threat. The idea was there. Yeah, sure, we might get the "I love you" bug, whatever, some virus is like, oh, that's annoying, right? But it wasn't to the extent that it is today. And now I think with the kind of vigilance and awareness that everybody has of, oh, it's a real problem, your job is so much easier communicating it to the rest of the team, to the rest of the organization, that, hey, this is real, it's important. I think before it was a challenge getting people to really pay attention to even not clicking on something in an email. It was a challenge. They're busy, they're doing their job. It's very understandable. But today, oh yeah, wait, I don't want to be the one that lets the bad guys into the organization. Wait, is this okay? And you know what, better yet, I'm just going to delete it and report and they'll send it again, right? So I think it's been really great. And so, going back from your perspective, I mean, it's nice to see, all of these changes. And I think I already know the answer, but with the kind of culture that exists in Mohegan Gaming, and I think with the advent of all of the cybercrime, was it an instant buy-in from everybody that, yeah, whatever you say you need, you get, this isn't even a question? Was it just, we're all on board, let's go do this? Or did you have to kind of bend minds to your will?
I was fortunate. I think I came in at the right time where this was an easier sell, right? Multiple millions of dollars in tools and in partnerships to help us navigate this. All of those requests that were made had to come with some explanation. It wasn't some random, just open checkbook, right? But we certainly went through the process. We did RFPs, we did proof of concepts, we made sure we had the right partners. We negotiated, best in class pricing, and then we would go to the board and say, this is something I recommend, and I was never told no. So,
Awesome.
again, but you got to do your due diligence. You got to make sure you know what you're spending somebody else's money. In my mind, I want to make sure that I pick the right tools. And at the end of it all, I always communicate to them, whether that's through a pen test or, we're never going to be perfect, and there's always going to be new vulnerabilities popping up every day. So it's a constant battle. So I would never give them the 100% assurance we're okay. I would always, let them know that we're doing the best we can, and we'll continue to fight the good fight. But things are subject to change real quickly, so we want to be prepared for that, which is really, the next bit of feedback I'd love to share with everybody on this podcast is, you can have the best tools and the best training and all the proactive measures aligning to the best frameworks. But at the end of the day, somebody's going to make a mistake at some point, right? And that is ultimately going to be the start of a problem. And so for me, my last 2 years in this role so far have been focusing on cyber resiliency and recovery. So that's looking at our backup process. That's making sure we have the best process to recover in the event of a disaster, right? Making sure we have partners lined up to deliver hardware, or that we have a warm site or a hot site environment ready to go in the event that we need to. Because, you can pay the ransom, and that's what a lot of people are doing, and that gets you your data back quickly. But you don't know what you don't know at that point. You don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, and if you're going to get your data back, or you're going to be able to continue to be operational, or you're going to get attacked again, right? So the thought process for me is, let's put ourselves in the best position possible to recover as quickly as possible, as cleanly as possible. So backup tool, really, really important in our industry. We do a lot of data, multiple terabytes of data, we'll say, and we're prepared to restore in a clean room. We're prepared to take backups from the cloud and restore on-prem up in the cloud, right? We wanted to have options, making sure, again, you don't know what the attack will be or how it will play out. So you want to make sure that you've got all of this in place. We went through a business impact assessment with our business units as well, and said, okay, now if something were to happen, here's the applications that we have in our portfolio, and it's extensive. I'm going to say 100 plus, and they need to understand that we can't recover all of those at the same time, right? We have to pick and choose our battles. So what's most important to them? Is it gaming? Is it the hotel? Is it the right? And I asked them to go through that exercise, and they did a great job coming up with a reasonable priority that we could then group our backups together and start to test. Let's recover this group, let's recover that group, let's make sure that we could run our point of sale or run our hotel or submit, open up doors if we had to, or whatever the case may be, making sure those applications are available for the organization in due time. And for that, I think that gets us at least with a plan, right? And I always have a Mike Tyson quote that I always like to say, everybody has a plan until you've been punched in the face.
Yep.
So I often say, we need to rehearse this plan. We need to practice it. We need to make sure that we could execute it within reasonable, amount of time with, and nothing, no scenario will be perfect and everything's, going to be chaotic, but I want to make sure that we practice and we train like we fight. And so for that, we did a mock cyber incident or tabletop exercise. And we've done a few, but those were really kickback. Everybody's like, well, what if this were to happen or that were to happen? What I did is I took our infrastructure leader and I said, okay, just you and I, here's what we're going to do. We're going to encrypt a bunch of files. We're going to try to create some alerts. We're going to disable our domain admin accounts for all of the team members that in IT that have one. We're going to remove our backup solution from our vCenter. We're going to make the vCenter go away completely. We're going to take a server node offline. We didn't impact the business greatly, but we basically got panic to set in. We issued a ransom note through some email account that was fictitious and demanding some Bitcoin. We executed the plan. We executed the plan under pressure, right? So the team was very concerned, organized in the war room, got our incident response team together, got our third-party vendors, backup vendors, forensic vendors. All of them were on the line, ready to go when I threw up the "we're just joking" flag. About 2.5 hours in, I said, just kidding. This is all us doing something for you to really, observe how you would engage. How would you go through the process? What would be their methodology? I was absolutely floored how well they performed, how calm they were, what they were able to do in terms of finding ways to reactivate their accounts and really pull things together, try to, look at backups, find out what they were starting the process of restoration, even though nothing had gone down yet, right? Our vendors started to transport and get in their vehicles, start to move in our direction. You really get to learn who your friends are when you do something like that. So it was exceptional. I thought the team would be a little upset with me. They were ecstatic. And one of my team members said, if you had any nerve whatsoever, you would have done it a second time, back to back, the next day, just to, because they would never have expected that, right? A back to back event. Yeah. So anyway, it was exceptional, and the team did a kind of a post-mortem on that. We learned how to do certain things differently. Our backup solution should never leave vCenter. We fixed that. We found ways to improve and to make put these accounts in the vault and make sure that we had a way to access our systems in the event that we needed to. So not only did we get a lot of learning from it, we put the team to test. I got to observe how they would perform under pressure. It was just a win-win for everybody. When I tell the board and I tell anybody who will listen, our vendors, that we did this kind of thing, they're amazed, and they're I would do it again. A little bit differently next time. I might have a little bit more impact to the business, because that was the one thing in the back of their mind. I'm like, why is the network still up? Why is this happening? Why are there no systems? Why is the help desk not ringing off the right? So we didn't have the full effect, but it was definitely something that we learned a lot from, and I was extremely proud of the team and how they responded.
That's fantastic. I mean, I think that a lot of people have kind of sung the praises of the tabletop exercise, and that alone, is very helpful. Gets people on board, gets the thinking and the planning going, and oh yeah, this way you can write out the plan without the pressure of of game day, right? And I'd say that yours was a fantastic surprise live fire exercise. You just came in and started dropping rounds and see how people reacted, which is fantastic. And I think that more people should do that. I mean, that's if you're in a position to be able to do that, I mean, that is that's spectacular. Then you get to see what happens when the rubber really does meet the road, when bullets really do start flying, how people start reacting. And so that's fantastic. Good for you. So, so do you plan on doing more of these surprises?
Absolutely. And now that we've got a DR plan that's drafted, and now we've got a playbook, and it should be a little bit more organized, right? We should be able to know what we're doing. I might not do it on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. I might want to do it on a weekend when people are a little bit harder to achieve and we're not all sitting in the office, right? So We'll find other dates, times, and scenarios to play out. But
Love it.
I think I always tell the team, you should always be on guard, because you never know. And you always want to train like you fight. So at the end of it all, they're welcoming the opportunity to do it again. And I'm certain it'll be on the agenda in the not too distant future.
Yeah. And I think that's the right response to it too, is that you get the you get the practice without the stress of it being real. And there is stress. You think it's real, but at the same time, you got to go through the paces, just, and see how you'd perform in that, and be like, oh, I definitely should have been a little calmer, or I definitely I should have thought this out. And then you build a better plan. You do better next time. So good for you. It dawns on me that, when in light of all of the kind of cyber attacks, something that isn't happening very frequently is when there is an attack, there's not a lot of communication, right? Everybody, and whether it's for legal reasons, embarrassment, business reasons, I think part of the problem facing our industry is there is little transparency when there's an incident, unless the incident is already public, in which case, well, now we have to be transparent. I think that and we've learned, I think everybody has learned so much from MGM, with their breach. It became very clear that hey, wow, this was great social engineering. They're spending a fortune on doing all the right things, but at the end of the day, it came down to social engineering. We need to, do a better job with that, and as you said, you can have all the best tools, spend all the money, but at the end of the day, it's that social engineering aspect. Somebody at a keyboard, somebody's going to make a mistake. That's what we saw there. So, what's your take on transparency? Is this something that we should be looking more for, or is it simply a pipe dream because of the legal and business ramifications, and you kind of have to stay quiet unless you have to speak up?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think depending on how things go when you're in the heat of battle, I think there's certainly some, restrictions on what you say and how you say it and whatnot. But for me, it's the post-mortem. And in our industry, we compete on gaming dollars and hotel guests, but we don't compete on cybersecurity, right? So my cybersecurity team is constantly networking with other cybersecurity teams in our industry, right? And from my perspective, I go to a conference, a gaming and leisure conference, the door's closed, we pass the mic around, and we talk about what went wrong. I talked to the MGM folks. I talked to the Caesars folks. Caesars had it as well. They paid the ransom, and many others, right, in the room. And we actually just, talk about what went wrong. Why did that happen? What could we have done differently? And sharing those ideas and best practices, because at the end of the day, we're all susceptible to it, and we're all fighting the same good fight. So why not share what we've learned, what we know, and in our industry, especially where it seems to be a common occurrence, everybody's asking the same questions. One of the things that really dawned on me as we were sitting in that room, one of the questions that was asked was, by a show of hands, how many people have a dedicated cybersecurity professional on their team? And I was floored to see half the room with their hands down.
Wow.
So even with all of that, right? Some of these companies are small, or they don't have the wherewithal, the resources. I'm very fortunate to have a team that's trained, certified, the resources, the support of the board, like making sure that we're putting our best foot forward. I was shocked to see how many people don't have the resources or the luxury of the resources to be able to do this. So that was eye-opening. But then it became, talking about what went wrong and what we could have done differently. And it ties back to social engineering almost every single time. What can we do with our team members? And so we do have a tool, and we do monthly campaigns to test them, and they are good ones. These are really hard tests, right? So we're not trying to embarrass you. We're trying to inform you, right? Things that we can do. We have a cyber line in our intranet where folks and our cyber team are populating things to be on the lookout for. Scan over the URL. Make sure you're looking for this, that, or the other thing. So we do have constant learning and testing of our team members. And if they're failing, they go back to training. We notify their manager. Again, not for the embarrassment factor, but we just need to do everything we can to make sure our team members are careful and doing the right things. And if they're not, they need to be held accountable for that, right? So those are some of the things. I will just say this. When you get our peers in the room, they're willing to share. They're willing to be transparent. They're willing to help one another. I appreciate that. If I were in the same boat, I would want to do the same for my peer group. I don't wish this on my worst enemy. Those folks at MGM went through hell for those 3-4 weeks of understanding what went wrong, the forensic piece of it, notification of the guests, just all of the impact, the revenue loss, the lawsuits. It's a lose-lose proposition for everybody. And so I feel for them. I was grateful for them willing to share what went wrong after the fact. But in the heat of battle, I'm certain there's some restrictions, and we kind of have to follow the protocol of what our legal counsel would suggest. But generally speaking, after the fact, you can get the details.
Yeah, and I think that I think that's great. Even if it is at conferences behind closed doors, the sharing of the postmortem, I think is just incredibly valuable, for the industry as a whole, to have that. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's what more could you ask for other than, I suppose, if it could be more public so more people get it. But you know what? Even if it stays within industries, I think the awareness is out there. It's not like there's some new strain, some new, I don't know, some any novel approach seems to come out pretty quickly, and we're any new vulnerability, that information's out there pretty quickly. So at the end of the day, it really is just about the fundamentals, kind of like, Michael Jordan was great at the basics. Yeah, he could do some cool stuff, but you got to be really good at the basics. And I think that's ultimately what this comes down to. And I think that, going back to your point of following the frameworks, when you build based on a framework, it's the fundamentals. They're not saying you've got to do this, specific, crazy, cool hook shot, and then great, and that's how you win the game. No, it's one on the fundamentals. If all the fundamentals are in place, and I think the real challenge is, for somebody like, well, I guess any organization, but I mean, you look at your organization, you're spread out all over the world. You've got thousands of people. It's and you're a big target. And you've got to have the fundamentals in all of these places with all of these people. I think that's the real challenge. And so with that, are there any sort of kind of lessons learned or tips that you'd like to share? Like, oh, this was a light bulb moment for us, when it came to training or even implementing the fundamentals, whatever it may be. I mean, I think the big one for me is always training. People, it's tough. That is a tough nut to crack. And I think everybody's, doing their best, but, is there some aha moment that you guys had?
Basic blocking and tackling, to your point, is crucial, and the foundation is important. One of the things when I came into the role, 6 years ago as the interim, I noticed that we had a vendor that was spending considerable amount of money on a vendor that was doing dark web monitoring. Now, 6 years ago, it was a thing, right? And we didn't have all the basic plumbing in place, and we were spending this money to monitor the dark web. So I told them that we're going to move our funds over here and spend a little bit more on tool development and looking at other options to deploy our fixed amount of resources on things that I thought were more important. And they flew in from a far location, and they tried to sell us on their tools and their product. And because I was not aware of them or familiar with the partner at all. And they came in and they said, so here's all the assets we're tracking. And I said, okay, like who? This person and that person. And I said, those people left the organization 3 years ago. So you're monitoring the dark web for people who no longer work for the organization. What about our new CEO? What about our management board? What about... So you are monitoring things that we don't necessarily care about. And so it tells me this, Matthew, we weren't mature enough to handle that level of sophistication or that monitoring that they were trying to offer us, because we weren't keeping them apprised of the changes, right? So we took those funds and we reallocated them to better tools. And we went back to it later. But it became an aha moment for me that you can put money into things, but they may not be the right things, or you may not be ready for those types of things. And then I would say, when you talk about basic tools, right, you can have 20 different tools that you're spending a lot of money on, but you only configure 10, 20, 30% of those tools. I would rather find 6 tools that we're leveraging 70, 80, 90, 100% of those features and functionality. So if you spread yourself out too far with too many tools, you don't get your bang for the buck. If you're using tools that you're not ready for, shame on you, right? So a few aha moments there was, let's look at what we're spending our dollars on. Does it make sense? Because we have a fixed amount of resources that we can spend on this battle. And if we're picking a battle over here that doesn't change the game or the war, then we need to move the resources around, right? So I do think of it like a battle plan. I do think of it about where your resources are on that map, whether that's dollars, people, vendors. You've got to make sure that you're focused on the right things. And we made a lot of changes early on that sort of drove a much more strategic plan, path forward, 5-year vision. We've executed on that 5 years. Now we're on to the next 5 years, right? So it's one of those things where it's a moving target. You got to stay on it. It has to be your number one thing. If it's not, I don't know what else is, right? I've got modernization. I've got leadership in people and development of people. That matters. But if you're not focused on this, the game will be over, right? And so it's really important that we keep our eye on this ball, and we'll continue to invest in it. We'll continue to make changes. We'll continue to hire and retract and retain and develop our people to be able to support this effort. This is a war. This is the war on terror, and it's going to go on forever. Like George Bush said, there's nothing quick about this. It's going to go on, and we need to be durable.
I love it. It's funny because the way you said, that's funny. I can hear myself now. That's interesting. The way that you said that the vendor wasn't tracking, that you weren't mature enough to use the tool. I couldn't help but think that, when they set that up, they should have had a system in place to be tracking your employees as they come and go. I mean, if they're monitoring your company, whether they tied into payroll, or they're tied into, even if they're just monitoring LinkedIn, if they're monitoring the dark web, they should at least be doing that and then tracking, oh, we've got people on LinkedIn here. It's fine if you get, maybe you miss some of the frontline workers who aren't, but the senior management, the ones that are going to be more the targets, I would have thought that would have tied. They should have had something cross-referencing LinkedIn to be like, oh, Jane left, and now Joe is in that position. So I think that was very nice of you to say that, but you did say you went back. So I'm curious, and we're not kind of throwing anybody under the bus or anything like that, but I'm curious, when you went back, was it that they had a system and process in place in their platform that you guys weren't using to kind of keep that information, which I would have thought when they came and from far away to pitch you on why you should stay, they would have mentioned that. So I'm thinking they didn't, but how did that play out? I mean, because you did go back and did they fix something, or what was it?
I think it wasn't the same vendor that we went back with, but we went sort of at it a different way. But I will say this, I think we needed to be the ones to drive the communication back to them so that they know what it is that we should be talking about, right? What are we trying to monitor? What's important to us, right? Whether that's our businesses, where they're located, the resources, the executive team, any type of changes. We need to be very mature enough to be able to communicate to them, changes in their process, right? So it was less, we meet regularly. That's helpful, but we have to have those conversations. We have to continue to update them with our changes, and they will do a great job. I think that was not necessarily a bad firm. I think it was the fact that we weren't able to give them the right information, and therefore, they were just tracking the wrong things. That's all.
Yeah, no, and to your point that no matter how good if you've got a Ferrari and you can only drive 20 miles an hour, from your home to your office, is that really the right car for it, right? Are you really fully utilizing that resource? So you can buy all kinds of great tools and equipment and services, but if you're not fully utilizing them, you're kind of wasting a lot of money. So I think, kind of going back and making sure you're really using the tools, fully, and maximizing that investment, I think is really important. I mean, that's a great point, because far too often, and we have, there are some industries that are kind of known for buying the bunch of great tools, and now you've got all these great tools, they're not even configured, and they're like, but we bought the very, yeah, you bought the very best, but you didn't even set it up. Like, so, and you don't have anybody who can run it. So what is the point? It's because going back to that corporate culture, CYOA, right? They feel very comfortable that we bought the very best. You did, and you paid a premium for it. And yet it still got taken advantage of because you weren't in a position to fully maximize that investment and fully utilize those resources. So I think you're spot on. That is a lesson that I think no matter how big or small the organization is, no matter how much money you're spending on anything, that's a real challenge because in business, you're constantly trying to go, 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 go. And then you're leaving all this stuff behind. And so I think being able to go back and I think you've nailed it.
And vendors are much more supportive these days. There's managed services, right? So they're not only just trying to sell you the tool and the licensing, but also try to sell you we can monitor, we can build it, we can monitor it, we can be your eyes and ears, right? So that's changed a bit too, where, folks just built the tool. Maybe they configured it. Maybe they knew enough about it to be dangerous. Maybe they had the staff to manage the alerts and triage the alerts. And maybe they didn't, right? So it just fell on deaf ears. Like if you think back to Target, this is way back. I remember I was in audit and I was pondering the fact, boy, they must have a huge team. They had so many alerts coming in that it was just deafening. They didn't even know what to look at, right? So you got to have the resources to be able to tune it and make sure that you're focusing on the right things, right? So all of these tools are great, but if you don't have the right people and the right folks monitoring and doing the work, you're dead in the water.
Yeah. Well, now I'm very biased, of course, because I think managed services is such a great option for so many businesses because you can then get that expertise where they're doing that particular job, fully utilizing it, making sure it works as best as possible. And you don't have to hire in-house, experts for that. But, this is not about us and how great we are. But I do think it's a general rule. There's a really good, and it wasn't there, years and years ago. This industry, it's funny. I was just having this conversation, I think on Friday on a podcast that'll come out in a few weeks about how the industry has changed. I mean, we've both been in it, we had both been the other guests. We'd been in it for decades. And when we first got into it, there was no managed anything. It was, just kind of IT. You're a consultant, an IT consultant. And then it was decades before it became the idea of managed services and the technology to support it came out. And now where we are today, I mean, we've just come so far as an industry of going from, technology that your whole job was to try to get it to work. And then your job was to keep it working. And now the technology works really well. And your job is to keep it safe and make it efficient. And the tools and the technology have grown. And I think, people are adapting and organizations are adapting to better utilize the technologies. I mean, even AI, which now I want to bring this up since it's been brought up. Okay, fine, I brought it up. But I think, that it's really fascinating how far we've come in such a short time. I mean, I think in our lifetime, it's been incredible what we've seen in the change in technology. So when it comes to things like AI, how do you see that playing out in your industry in gaming, or is it just or do you see it more on the the cybersecurity and IT side?
Oh, I think it's all over our industry, right? I think they've already started. We've been dabbling a little bit with the cloud. One thing that's tricky about Mohegan and MGM and all the gaming companies that were in there, it's highly regulated, as you can imagine. So being able to put gaming data somewhere other than in your data center in the jurisdiction in which your regulator authorizes is a very sensitive topic, right? So we are doing some of that today, but we do it carefully. We do it with permission. We do it, we clear things with regulators. We just want to make sure that we don't break any rules. But at the same time, we're trying to become more efficient and effective as an organization, right? These tools exist. They're here to help. They're here to stay, right? Yeah. So there is opportunities there. We are exploring chatbot capabilities, kind of an open AI concept, but doing that within our tenant and within the cloud that we have with all the plumbing that we've built and secured. That way, the data is coming in and never going back out, right? So it's not that we're not supportive of AI. I have blocked a lot of things from the firewalls to make sure that we're not too far ahead, that our users aren't taking advantage of things, although I know that they're exciting and they're new and they're helpful in their jobs. We have to do it securely. So again, top of mind is making sure that we're approving things when and if we're ready and finding a way to do it, as opposed to no, we want to say yes, but we want to say yes within the context of a secure process and or environment that we can do it in, right? So I would say robotics, I would say the ability for our guests. Today we have our call center, right? We have the ability for you to engage with a digital guest assistant, right? We have a limited number of call center folks. The questions that come in are voluminous. Some of them are challenging. They want to book a reservation using their loyalty points, on a weekend. They want the ocean view, and right, you can imagine all the complexity that could come through there. The digital guest assistant can't do it all, but if they can take out 20 to 25% of the questions of what are your hours of operation? When is this restaurant open? Can I make a restaurant reservation? Yes, that's easy, right? We can get this software to do a lot of great things and limit the amount of the time in line or the abandonment rates or what have you, right? The guest service part is really important. So if we can leverage tools, leverage technology, leverage AI to do this, it's a no-brainer. Lastly, I would just say from a cybersecurity perspective, these partners that we're dealing with all have it in their tools. It's embedded in their tools. They want you to use it. And if they're your eyes and ears, they are using it. And they're finding ways to streamline alerts and making sure that what they're actually monitoring is relevant. And they can do that with artificial intelligence and machine learning, because we want it to get better and better and better over time, right? So I'm excited about this opportunity. I've got one person on the team that is totally dedicated into it, and he's going to grow a team that's going to continue to evolve in this space. I think we have to do it. I think everybody is going to do it. It's just a matter of who gets there first. And I'd love to see Mohegan be on the leading edge when it comes to artificial intelligence for sure.
I love it. Mark, this has been absolutely fantastic, and I've enjoyed every bit of it. But before we head out, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about Mohegan?
Sure. I mean, I'm up on LinkedIn, so you can certainly take a look at my profile there, Mark Rosa. I am happy to connect with anybody who might want to chat further about anything that they learned today or are intrigued about. Mohegan, we have our websites out there. You can check out all the different properties that we support and manage. So mohegangaming.com is, I believe, the URL. It's changed a couple of times, but just Google Mohegan, you'll find us. And, it's a multi-property integrated resort concept. Lots of fun. If you guys are looking for something fun to do, I can tell you we can support that, right? Between gaming, hospitality, food and beverage, entertainment, we're all over it. Our arenas are packed. We've got the Connecticut Suns basketball team doing exceptionally well, the Tri-Bones, 100% of that. And just a tremendous organization with a lot of great people who care a lot about the guest service. So I can almost guarantee you, if you're coming to Mohegan, you're going to have a great time.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us, Mark. And until next time.
Thank you, sir. Nice meeting you all.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.